Hello, and welcome to another episode of My Pocket Psych, the podcast all about the psychology of the workplace. I'm your host, Dr. Richard McKinnon. I'm a chartered psychologist and coach. And this episode is another in our series that we're focusing on leadership, specifically sustainable leadership. All the resources for this series can be found on the website at worklifepsych.com/sustainable leadership. This time around, I want to look at a really important aspect of leadership, and it's something that we call out in our recent white paper, which you can download for free via the link I just shared. Leadership development. The investment made in leadership development is often one of the biggest investments an organization could make in any year, considering the impact of existing and aspirational leaders. Impact they can have on other people, their performance, their well-being, the implementation of strategy, the impact on the organization's bottom line. And it's great when it happens. However, so much of what is badged as leadership development falls short on some really key metrics. So what I want to do today is flag some of the main weaknesses that we see in leadership development, some that we've encountered in our leadership development practice, and some where we've had to overcome it, where a client has come to us a couple of years down their leadership development journey. And we have to spend time and energy undoing some of that. I don't want this to come across as a criticism of any practitioners, because there's good reasons that these challenges manifest in leadership development activities. For a start, people are being asked to do a lot with less in terms of budget and time, and also our often common need for novelty means that new ideas are treated with more serious focus than concepts and skills and data that have been around for decades. So what I want to do is walk through these challenges. I've also written this up in the form of a blog post, and I'll share a link to that in the show notes. I'd love to hear what you think about this, though. So please drop your questions and your thoughts about this into an email and send it to me at podcast@worklifepsych.com. Let's preface this with the understanding that none of these are being presented in any specific order, or rather the order that I thought of them, how much they were preying on my mind. And several of them are related, and several of them can show up concurrently and detract even more from the leadership development experience and its anticipated impact. But let's start with time. There's two aspects here. One is insufficient time for development activities, full stop. It is not enough to grab little slices of time in a normal working day when your leaders happen to be together anyway to say that's when development is going to take place. Absolutely. Huge amounts of development take place on the job, and it's a really powerful way of learning and applying knowledge and new skills. But if you say you've got a leadership development program, which is an organized program of events, experiences, and practice, grabbing 30 minutes at the end of the leadership quarterly meeting or offsite is not going to give you what you're looking for, no matter how much you're badging it as leadership development. Secondly, we've got a challenge where leaders are not given time to focus. So even when there is time away from the workplace, maybe they're at an offsite as part of the leadership development program, maybe there's a dedicated half day or day periodically for this, they're not given permission to step away from the day job. And so their focus is not entirely on their development. They're expected to, or the inference is that they will stay on top of the day job. They will stay on top of their inbox, whether it's email or Slack or Teams or all the other inboxes we're cursed with these days. The fact that they have to remain available to those people that work for them, it means that these distractions take them away from the focus of the dedicated leadership development time. My advice is to make this time as sacred as possible and enable people that work for leaders or aspiring leaders, make them aware of what constitutes an emergency so that they know what level of disaster they can bring to their boss's attention. And apart from that, if your direct reports can't survive a half day or a day without you, then I might suggest there's a bigger problem here than finding time for leadership development. In leadership development, there is a challenge with concepts, skills, an entire leadership development curriculum being based on ideas that lack evidence, quality scientific evidence. There's an emphasis often on truisms and misunderstandings about how people operate and how organizations function, things that are wildly out of date or remain unchallenged, something that we call zombie myths. No matter how much practitioners like me or researchers in psychology or any other science of the workplace, no matter how much we shoot them down, they seem to rise again from the dead. Things like inaccurate measurement of personality, using very poor questionnaires simply because they're popular, leaving leaders with a very basic and out-of-date view of what personality at work is about. And that's just one example that particularly rankles with me because I come across it all the time when I start working with an organization. If you're not asking, what's the evidence for this that we're teaching our leaders, then that is going to percolate throughout the organization because it's how leaders are going to make their decisions, how they're going to view the world of work and people and their performance and well-being and all of that other stuff that could be covered on a program. So just because an idea is popular or long-standing, it doesn't mean it has any basis in fact or it's supported by research. The fourth point on my list is when leadership development is the badge, but the activity is simply a reliance on motivational speakers. Organizations can easily spend a lot of money on retaining the services of these speakers. Often it's used to enthuse the leaders on a program. And if this is badged as entertainment or a nice treat at the end of a long day, that's one thing because they rely on the services of former athletes or authors or mountaineers or even TV celebrities. If it's entertainment, that's fine. But if this is framed as a source of leadership lesson, then we're both buying into potentially evidence-free content or something that simply isn't applicable in the organizational context in which these leaders are going to operate. It can be interesting to hear how famous people have approached challenges, but running a country is very different to running a department in an IT firm. Training for the Olympics is very different to approaching a busy inbox. So if it's entertainment, yes, fine, if you have the budget. But think twice before engaging these motivational speakers and simply ask yourself, how applicable is what they're saying to our organizational context? Number 5 on my list is one that I've seen so many times. This is when an entire leadership initiative is based on one book. Someone with influence in the organization, quite possibly the CEO, has encountered a business book or a book about the workplace that has really resonated with them. And they make it required reading for their leadership team. And in fact, their development is now based on this. I'll come back to the evidence point. Just because something is out there doesn't mean it's true. Just because something is published doesn't mean it's based on anything replicable in your organization. Just because it's written by someone you recognize when you're looking at shelves of books, it doesn't mean they're an expert in what they're talking about. In fact, a lot of the time you have to look at the small print to find that they didn't even write it themselves. So this can turn into a very expensive and time-consuming and disruptive and ultimately negative organizational fad. I'd remind everyone, just because something is new in terms of a book, it doesn't mean that the concepts in it are new. They could be simply repackaged existing concepts. Or just because someone says it's new, it doesn't mean that it's based on extensive research or data whatsoever. Now, even if a program gives leaders sufficient time to focus, if it gives them some really good evidence-based knowledge and skills, even with all that good stuff in place, this will lose its relevance and its impact if the participants in the program aren't given the opportunity to turn these insights into action. So it could be that a program omits completely turning the theory into practice, or there's no practical element to the program. It's merely conceptual. And you really do need a mix of both, because we're talking about turning ideas into skills or frameworks into behaviors. People need to experience that to see how it fits with them. And just because they've read about it or they've listened to someone talk about it, it doesn't mean they're going to be skilled in doing it. And in fact, one of the great things that comes from leadership programs, in my own professional experience, is giving the opportunity for people to fail at something, to make an absolute mess of something in a safe, supportive environment, and then improve on that iteratively, so that when they go back into the workplace, they're feeling a little bit more confident, a little bit more skilled. Without that practical application, the information doesn't last so long. The concepts are soon forgotten. It's all filed neatly away and doesn't see the light of day. And then you've really missed an opportunity to move the needle in terms of performance and leadership behavior and all the stuff you were hoping to get from a leadership program. Given my point at the very beginning about leadership development being a big spend for organizations, I am frequently surprised when a program badged as leadership development, it loses its whole focus. The emphasis moves from development and improvement and the impact on the bottom line to simply rewarding people. Attendance on a program is a reward for high performers. Then, if it's a reward, then you miss the opportunity to embrace those people whose performance could really do with an uplift, who have the core of what's needed for leadership, but maybe some rough edges that need polishing, or a development need that could easily be addressed by their involvement on the program. The aspiring leaders are the people who could benefit from this the most, even though their scorecard isn't perfect. If you organize these programs and you find you've spent more time thinking about the really lovely venue and the evening entertainment more than the content of the program, there's a real risk that you're falling into this trap of program equals reward rather than development program aimed at the right people for the right purpose. At number 8, we've got a related point. And this encapsulates a few weaknesses, but I've taken the decision to merge them into one. I'm calling this a lack of transparency. When there's a lack of transparency around the criteria for access to the program, it can look like it's basically unfair or its access is stacked against certain people. Without the criteria being clear to stakeholders, then it could easily look like an exercise in favoritism. And if there's a lack of transparency about what the desired outcomes are for the participants and for the organization as a whole, then people will be left unsure about what's expected of me. What do you need me to do differently as a result of being on this program? I've seen that very quickly turn into the program equals hassle. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why I have to dedicate so much time to this, and it's taking me away from the day job. Further down that line, the whole leadership development program becomes a sheep dip experience, where the only thing we're really tracking is who attended, rather than what were we hoping for this individual? What were we hoping for this cohort? What did we expect to see out the other side? When that hasn't been made clear, well, then it's simply an exercise in attendance. If leadership development is going to be one of the primary investments you're making, one of the most important development interventions in your annual calendar, why would you simply look left and right and copy what other people are doing? Why would you copy what organizations are doing when those organizations don't share your sector, your values, your priorities, and especially not your strategy? Yes, You can learn lessons from your peers in other organizations, maybe lessons like what I'm sharing right now. But if you don't configure the program for what your organization needs, for what the people in your organization need, you're going to be rolling out something that's not fit for purpose. You're going to be rolling out something that doesn't have what we keep mentioning on this series. It's missing that contextual sensitivity. It's not built for you and your organization. And just because your competitors are rolling out a program of evidence-free concepts and motivational speakers, is that something that you really want to copy? Starting from first principles, what do we need? Where are we headed? What is good? What is great in this organization? These are much better places to start than what's the rest of the world doing now? And that makes it really easy for organizations to look for what's new equals what's good, and then buy into fads and fashions and find themselves doing things just because other organizations are doing it. I've left this one till last. Number 10, definitely not because it's the least important, but this is one that is a huge source of problems in the whole leadership development space, and one that many practitioners and their stakeholders shy away from because it's a little bit uncomfortable, it's a little bit difficult to discuss, and it's difficult to do. Evaluation. It's really important if at the outset you have clarified what you want to see from the program, that you measure the extent to which the program has met those goals, the extent to which the program has delivered what you hoped it would deliver. And I see this shying away from evaluation in part because it's tricky to do. It is. It is because you've got so many variables, so many moving parts. It's not like a laboratory. That doesn't mean we shouldn't try. And it could start on a journey of just measuring how much the content resonates with the participants, or how much of an opportunity they've had to put things into practice. It can be a multi-step journey towards really joined up, impactful evaluation. It doesn't all have to happen in year one. But if you're not even thinking about it, it means that when push comes to shove, you won't be able to justify continued investment in it because you've got nothing to show for it apart from just how many people attended. This reminder that evaluation is important can really help at the very beginning of thinking about the program. Why would you run a program in the first place? Not simply because you think you should have one, but rather to be able to answer the question, what's the problem we're trying to solve here? Without an understanding of what it is that your aspiring and existing leaders need, well, what's going to be in the program to begin with? And how will you know if they've got there? And how will you know what kind of feedback they need? And how will you know how you can iterate and improve the program year on year? If you're not attempting to evaluate it, if you're not observing how well it's going and trying to improve, you're just replicating mistakes. It is a tricky thing to do. I'll be really clear, but that shouldn't stop us even thinking about it, even discussing how we might move just one step further on that evaluation journey. So 10 ways that leadership development might fall short. And I suppose the most important point I want to make in this monologue is just because a program exists, it doesn't mean it's meeting your needs. It doesn't mean it's meeting the needs of the participants. And also, just because your competitors have a leadership development program, that doesn't necessarily imply you need one now or this year is the perfect year to do it. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say, get in touch, have the conversation. One thing that we do a lot is having those startup conversations about what leadership development could look like and how you might identify what needs to be on that program and how you can best support your aspiring and your existing leaders through a development pathway. There is no one size fits all in this. And if I want anything, echoing down your ears at the end of this episode, it's that you need to make something work for your environment. It needs to have that sensitivity to your context if it's going to have any positive impact for you and your leaders at all. I'd love to hear what you think about these challenges. I'd love if you've been on a program, if you've organized a program, or you're looking at the market. What are the weaknesses you see? What are the challenges you anticipate? Drop me a note. And of course, if you're watching this as a video, you can put it in the comments below. It's always great to hear from people engaging with the podcast. And this is very much my attempt to shake the hornet's nest a little bit. I really want to, part of this entire initiative is to try and raise the bar around leadership development and make it a more impactful, intentional investment rather than something we do automatically because we think we should. So please get in touch. And if this is in any way resonated positively with you, let me know. As ever, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching if you are, and I look forward to seeing you next time.